morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
He's a soft-spoken, thoughtful young cowboy with a gift for riding broncs and a grateful appreciation for the cowboy life he lives. He's Matt Robertson, and he's back to share more of his love of cattle, cowboy work, and horses that buck this week.
Whether you go to a rodeo or a horse event or ranch rodeos or brandings or a community thing, Western music gatherings, there's great people everywhere, and it's you can bank on it that it all relates back to the family aspect and the ranching and the hard work and the pride that they take in their livestock and the land.
And a wild ride in a small aircraft made Baxter Black think twice about springtime flying.
Flying over the western plains in the springtime, especially if I'm under 35,000 feet. They have some monumental weather.
Yeah, this is a pretty wild story today. And on the Rangeland News, how much do consumers really know about the marketing terms that food retailers are always throwing around?
In many ways, consumers have never cared more how their food is produced and never known less about how their food is produced.
And in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight,
he'd try you each time you got on. But once he quit bucking, and I got him lined out, he was the best friend that I've ever known.
one of the master reciters, Red Stegall. And you'll hear the unmistakable voice of Bob Nolan introducing our classic Song of the West, while the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File looks at some of the most challenging colts that turn into the best horses. And I'll visit with Matt Robertson after he gets things started.
Hot coffee is waiting, he's contemplating moving to a country where the mercury don't drop. Looks forward to summer, why he don't leave you wondering. He must love this life or he's too dumb to stop. His spurs they're jingling, his toes they're tingling, frosty breath rises like warm chimney smoke. He's calving cows on stormy nights, he's been riding since daylight, trots for the house, but he'd sure like to load. They call it a country where a cowboy is king, where peaceful days ride is easy on your mind. He wonders if he can hold out one more frigid, high, lonesome winter time. He cusses the snow, but he's still gotta go. To shirk any task would be a blow to his pride. But the winters seem colder, each year he grows older, making him as bitter as the wind outside. They call it a country where a cowboy is king, where peaceful days ride is easy on your mind. He wonders if he can hold out for one more frigid, high, lonesome winter time. Old wounds that once mended, the pain he thought ended, return each season with the coming of the storm. And old flames he had kindled, he once thought long dwindled, return late at night, but no longer are warm. They call it a country where a cowboy is king, and a peaceful day's ride is easy on your mind. He wonders if he can hold out for one more frigid, high, lonesome, oh so lonesome, that frigid, high, lonesome winter time.
Frigid, high, and lonesome, Matt Robertson, and Matt's back with me again this week. And hey, Matt, where'd that song come from?
I wrote that back when I was in Wyoming, and I've never really enjoyed the cold weather, and when I moved to Canada, I kind of maybe went the wrong direction for that, to satisfy that part of myself, but just the lyrics in that song describe a cold, frosty morning and a guy riding back to the house in cabin time. And then actually when I was 21, I got in a pretty bad wreck, and I broke some bones in my foot. A horse fell on me, and it bugged me for years. It still does, so I can always tell the weather's coming to change, and that part's in there. And then there's a sort of a line in there about old flames coming back late at night, but no longer warm, and that's kind of a sort of a cowboy's dreams of maybe he should have done things different in his past or whatever. I don't know, but it all kind of comes together into an interesting cowboy song, I guess.
What were the circumstances when that horse went down with you there?
Oh, just a frozen morning, and there was a cow in with some yearlings, and I was trying to sort her out, and the horse I was riding was really cowy, and anyway, the cow went one way, and the horse went with her and lost her footing. And a guy always thinks you're pretty catty, you're pretty fast, and you can get out of whatever, but that happened so fast. She fell on me and smashed my foot into about 1,000 pieces, and so
they have to pack you off to the hospital?
Oh yeah, we went to the hospital, and actually they had to give me an epidural, and I was...
We used to do that for uterine prolapse.
yeah. Well, I was paralyzed for 3 days from the waist down because the pain was so bad they couldn't give me enough morphine to get rid of it. So I was pretty stove up for a while.
Yeah, a while to get over that.
Yeah, it still haunts me.
Well, let's talk about some of the singers and songwriters and cowboys that have influenced you in your earlier days, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Matt Robertson, cowboy, bronc rider, horseman, and singer-songwriter, back with me today. And the CD, Making History, is getting great reviews from all across the country. Boy, there was a nice one in, I think it was the April issue of Western Horseman. That's so great to see. You've assembled some terrific musicians on there. Gosh, you've got, is it Gord Matthews?
Gord Matthews and Tom Moon.
Yeah.
Jeff Bradshaw.
Ian, a lot of Ian Tysons.
Yeah, they all played
players.
Played with Ian, and Dan Fremlin from Stump Lake.
Stump Lake Ranch mandolin player.
Yes. Byron Meyer played the fiddle, and John Taylor from the Symphony Orchestra in Edmonton played the bass.
Oh, man.
Just terrific. And then Barry Allen, the engineer, he's just fantastic. He's an award-winning, he's an icon in Canadian recording. He did Corb Lund's $5 Bill album, and he's just a great guy.
Yeah, it's got that touch, just that real professional production touch to it.
Yeah, it does. I really appreciate that. That's what I always figured is it's something that's forever. And I remember being a kid and sitting down at night listening to my dad's records, and of old stuff that he listened to when he was younger, and what an impression that made on me. So I figure what I leave behind might make an impression for somebody else down the line, and I want to leave behind the best I can. So
yeah, you remember some of those old songs that kind of made that impression?
Yeah, I was actually just listening to the one Red Steagall, All My Cowboy Friends, the other day. Do you know that album?
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So me and Ernie Taylor and all them.
The Day That Copenhagen Saved the Day.
That's right. Yeah. Horses and Wars. That's another song that.
Oh gosh, he's got one about Herman Linder, I think, called "He Preferred Bucking Horses to Books."
Yeah. Red Steagall's just great. He's a really inspiration for me.
Yeah. Have you had a few chances to meet Red?
I have, and I'll tell you something. I sent an album to Red, my first album, and just in the mail, and I didn't expect anything to ever happen. And he'd never played it. He said, because the production wasn't real great on it, so he thought maybe, I could do better. But when I went and I visited with him. He remembered who I was just from me sending that album. So
Yeah, he's like that. If he says he's going to do something, you can bank on it. He will.
Yeah, he's a good spokesperson for the cowboy, I think.
Absolutely, and has been for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I think this would be a pretty good spot for a song from Red. And this one's from one of his most recent albums. The album title is When the Grass Was Still Deep, and the song is That's My Boy, Dragging Calves to the Fire.
It's been hot and dry since the 1st of July. Summer rain skipped us this time. Oh, there ain't much to say, just turns out that way. We live west of the dry line. If I told you I didn't worry about the weather and such, you just might call me a liar. But I trust in the Lord, He's been good to me. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. There's markets and interest, cool and mad cow. Trade embargoes are getting me down. Granddaddy fought the Comanche, then lost out to Nestor's pushing a plow. At the bank there's a note standing between me and broke. Great interest, only 2 above prime. Takes all we can do just to get through and make another payment on time. If I told you I didn't worry about making ends meet, you just might call me a liar. But I trust in the Lord, He's been good to me. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. There's a pretty little redhead running the needles. She helps her mom keep the books. They're the rest of my crew, and whenever they're through, they'll throw on the feed. They're the cooks. Never thought I'd reach 50 quite as quick as I have. Wonder where my youth was spent. Chasing big dreams, scheming big schemes. Reckon that's where it all went. If I told you I didn't worry about leaving too quick, you just might call me a liar. But I trust in the Lord, He's been good to me. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. That's my boy dragging calves to the fire. Yeah, that's my boy dragging calves to the fire.
Red Stegall, and I'm sitting here with Matt Robertson, just enjoying the music. And speaking of Red, he's a real deal. You know, he had polio when he was a youngster, and it nearly paralyzed his right hand and his right arm. And he can still play guitar, and he still ropes in spite of that handicap.
Really?
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
He used to team rope, a lot of celebrity team ropings. He did all right.
Yeah. I noticed him with his arm there, and he's so subtle with it that...
Oh, you'd never know.
You'd almost never know, yep.
No. Yet he's very, very comfortable talking about it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's neat. Well, this whole world of Western music, is it's a pretty small part of the whole entertainment business in a way. But, man, there's just such quality people in it,
Yeah, it's anything Western, whether you go to a rodeo or a horse event or ranch rodeos or brandings or a community thing, Western music gatherings, there's great people everywhere, and it's you can bank on it that it all relates back to the family aspect and the ranching and the hard work and the pride that they take in their livestock and the land and caring for everything, and it relates into all aspects of their lives, and it's really encouraging, I think, to see it carried on. People like Red and yourself, and
Well, it does my heart so much good to see guys like you and some of the other fellows that are, they're the real deal. Either they've got it in their heart, or they have, and they do, earn their living on the back of a horse, whether it's a small family operation of 150 cows, or it's day riding for a bunch of different outfits, or on the crew of a big outfit year round, or whatever. But I just love to see this cowboy pride in these younger guys coming up. And for a while we kind of wondered, is this whole way of life in this culture going to survive? But from what I see, in a lot of ways, it's in good hands.
Yes, sir. I think you're right. I think it kind of goes like in waves, and there's peaks and then there's valleys. But through it all, I mean, what we pass down to the next generation is, that's our part of making history, and that's why I really like that song. Is we live in the continuation of history, and we look at what our grandfathers left behind for us to do, and we think maybe what we do now isn't that important, but what we do now is going to make a big impact on those guys down the road.
Boy, that's so well said, Matt. And tell you what, we'll get into some of the finer points of cowboy work and talk about some of the influence of the buckaroo traditions we see on a lot of today's ranches, and we'll do that just a little later. Baxter Black is next, and then another one of those songs I like to play around this time of year. And then the Rangeland News, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at springtime flying.
What makes America the most productive, generous country on earth? Well, it's ordinary people like us working together to achieve extraordinary things. B&W builds the trailer hitches that hook the loads that haul the grain, the coal, the cattle, cotton, gas, horses, and RVs that keep America on the road. Quality made, employee-owned, and customer-tuned. B&W trailer hitches working together to keep America proud.
Flying in small planes doesn't bother me. However, over the years, I've developed some caution flying over the western plains in the springtime, especially if I'm under 35,000 feet. They have some monumental weather in that country from Amarillo up to the Dakotas. Well, one bright spring morning several years ago, I boarded a little six-seater in Chadron, Nebraska. I was the only passenger, and I took the back seat. On boarding, I noticed the pilot's open suitcases in the compartment behind me. The pilots were young men. They gave me the brief safety instructions, and off we went, headed south. As we leveled out, I could not help but notice the giant wall of black clouds to my right. They rose further than I could point. The flight was bouncy. The co-pilot kept checking on me, and suddenly a vertical clearing of sunlight split the storm clouds. The plane banked into the clearing. They were going to try for the scheduled landing in Alliance. From the dashboard, pencils and sunglasses flew my way. Their giant black book of maps of every airport in the world broke open and filled the air. Over my shoulder, I could hear the bags banging around. T-shirts, Fruit of the Looms, and a Stephen King novel came spewing from the luggage compartment. A lone dirty sock snagged on the seat back in front of me. The pilot made a left, and we popped back out of the turbulence. Once under control, the co-pilot leaned back and asked about my health. "We're going to bypass Alliance," he said, "and Sydney doesn't look good either." He was the color of cream of wheat. I looked back to the east. I could see all the way to Philadelphia. "North Platte's right over there," I said. We landed in North Platte in 52-mile-an-hour winds, and that's where I spent the night. Well, Jerry said one spring he caught a ride from Valentine, Nebraska to Winter, South Dakota with an Irish engineer named Joe. It was Joe's airplane. The weather was springtime rough, and Joe's plane didn't give Jerry much confidence. When he climbed in the four-seater, he noticed Joe was wearing a parachute. "You got another one of those?" Jerry asked. Joe said, "Don't worry. You probably won't need one."
This is Baxter Black
On Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan.
brought to you by B&W Turnover Bowl.
This is always a very busy time on the ranches and farms of the West, as you well know. Branding, checking the summer range fences and water sources, spring turnout, and of course field work, preparing the seed beds, getting the crop in. And that's where this song from Eli Barzy seems to be a good fit.
My father said some things you learn by only doing turn. Some things come around, so be ready if you can. You play your heart like a farmer turns his land, and you plant your fields when the spring is tender. When the summer beats down, you pray for rain. You hope for the harvest and the long cold winter, and then you plant your fields again. Well, he spoke right to my restless soul, still wild and hungry and beyond control. For all that you do, there's a time and a place, but you won't know it till it comes your way. And you plant your fields when the spring is tender. When the summer beats down, you pray for rain. You hope for the harvest and the long cold winter, and then you plant your fields again. And you plant your fields when the spring is tender. When the summer beats down, you pray for rain. You hope for the harvest and the long cold winter, and then you plant your fields again. And then you plant your fields again.
Now the news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says here, ranchers and farmers who produce the food the world eats have never had a bigger challenge. Consumers, according to many studies, are more concerned than ever about the safety of the food we eat. And Rod Bain of USDA has this very interesting report.
How do consumers view how their food is produced today? According to Jack Bobo of Intrexon at this year's USDA Agricultural Outlook Forum,
In many ways, consumers have never cared more how their food is produced and never known less about how their food is produced. We've got the best food system in the history of the world and the safest food system in the history of the world and the most concerned public in the history of the world.
and he says that contradiction could pose many conflicts and challenges in the long term, involving trends in both food policy and production.
People love innovation almost as much as they despise change. And there's nothing they despise more than change in the food they eat. Because food is what brings us together as friends, as family.
Resulting in a base of confused, even skeptical consumers.
You look at how we market food and you see these idyllic farms on the packaging where the animals are happy as they're led to slaughter. If you market a vision for agriculture that's inconsistent with the reality for agriculture, how can you be surprised if people don't understand agriculture?
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture at Washington, D.C.
Well, the world-famous RCMP musical ride. It's the trail this summer in celebration of the country's 150th birthday, and this is some of the schedule. They will be in Edmonton, Alberta, August the 6th and 7th at the Amberley Meadows Equestrian Center. And then they'll be in Whitehorse, way up in the Yukon, on August the 12th and 13th. And then they'll be in Skagway, Alaska, on the 14th of August at the municipality of Skagway's White Cross Country Ski Club. And then they'll be down to Burnaby, BC on the 18th of August, and Vancouver on August the 19th and 20th at the PNE. Maple Ridge, August the 21st. Vancouver again, August 22nd and 23rd at the PNE. And then across to Victoria, August 26th and 27th. And then the musical ride will be in Kamloops, BC, August 29th and 30th at MacArthur Island Park. And then out to Banff at the Banff Community School Park on September 2nd and 3rd. And they'll wind up the tour September the 6th to the 10th at Spruce Meadows in Calgary, Alberta. And this old wandering cowboy microphone and guitar will be wandering out to the 41st annual Ivan Danes Country Music Picnic. That's August the 10th to the 13th at the Danes Rodeo Grounds and Ranch. And I'll have the Great Western Spirit Band with me. That's my little brother Jim and our Uncle Mike. And then we'll be heading up to the Stony Plain Cowboy Gathering August the 18th to the 27th. And for more details on this one, you can see stonyplaincowboypoetry.com. Here's something interesting. A study from food-producing countries around the world has found that people around the globe care about what goes in their food and on their tables, but even the most diligent consumers admitted they don't really know the meaning of a lot of food labels. For instance, 82% of organic buyers say their motivation is because they believe organic foods are pesticide-free. In fact, organic farmers may use a variety of chemical sprays and powders on their crops. Additionally, research from Stanford University concluded that there was no health or nutrition difference between conventional and organically produced food. Global consumers were also confused about labels stating no added hormones or no antibiotics. More than 60% of consumers thought no added hormones meant there were no hormones in the product with that label, which of course is not true, while another 25% thought the products with this label were high quality or higher quality. And about 1/3 of consumers believed that antibiotic-free meant all non-labeled products contained antibiotics, which also isn't true. Well, there's a complete list of cattle haulers if you're looking for a way to get your cattle to market on the BC Livestock Co-op website. That's bclivestock.bc.ca. And they've got all the information on upcoming sales there, too. And, of course, there are regular cattle sales every Wednesday at the Innisfail Auction Market, Innisfail, Alberta. 2 horse sales a month, pre-sort sales, and more. Get all the details there at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item. And this was big news for me. I just signed a deal to perform at the Calgary Stampede in July for $5,000. And they gave me until the end of June to send them the money. Hey, thanks, Bud Edgar, for that one. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, we'll look at how some of the most challenging horses can turn out to be some of the best mounts with the right approach and enough time. More from Matt Robertson and more good music when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File looks at how some of the most challenging colts become the best horses. After the Poindexter boys come out, they're known as Steel Dust, and it's a heart full of song.
Just riding along all the day long with a mind full of freedom, a heart full of song. I ain't got no worry, I ain't got no blue. Might as well be happy, got nothing to lose. Ain't got no worry, ain't got no blue. Might as well be happy, got nothing to lose. I'm just riding along all the day long with a mind full of freedom and a heart full of song. Saddle up my pony, pack up my grip, riding across the prairie, gonna take me a trip. don't have to hurry, no need to run, 'cause I know when I get there I'll have me some fun. Ain't got no worry, ain't got no blues, might as well be happy, got nothing to lose. Just riding along all the day long with a mind full of freedom and a heart full of song. With a mind full of freedom and a heart full of song.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Experience the true spirit of the West at Canada's largest Western store, Irvine Tack and Western Wear. If you need a curb strap or a 4-star gooseneck trailer, you'll find it here. A saddle for every rider. Cutters, reiners, penners, trainers, working ranch cowboys, ropers. They have over 1,200 in stock. And they have Western wear for the entire family. And how about a gift card? Shop online at irvinesaddles.ca. Free shipping on orders of over $100. irvinesaddle.ca, 1-877-946-9494. You know, some of the most challenging colts actually do turn out to be the best horses. Not always, but often in my observations. I can think of a lot of troubled horses and bronchi colts that many trainers would just write off or give up on. And fortunately for some of these horses who wound up in the hands of the right person who could see the potential underneath the surface, they turned out to be just great. A couple of examples. Quincy, Jonathan Field's Arab quarter horse gelding that was considered way too wild and dangerous to do anything with, went through several trainers, but if you've seen his bridleless demos and Liberty work, this incredibly athletic horse is something to behold. And I can't count the number of times I've watched or been involved with the first saddling and the first ride on a colt with several top hands and wondered if that colt would buck. Well, we've all been wrong as often as we were right. Some colts accept the saddle willingly, move out with no problem, and often do the same on the first ride. And if they stay that way, it's fine, but it's often 3 or 4 rides into the process that they decide to take over the agenda. And others will explode on the first couple of steps regardless of how much prep has been done. But before long, they'll make that complete change and willingly figure it out. And often this type of colt will be just fine and a pleasure to work with a little ways down the trail. Now, the great horsemen don't always know what a colt will do on the first saddling or the first ride, but they do know exactly what to do as soon as the colt reacts. They also recognize that magic moment when the colt softens all through his body and his eyes go from scared to relaxed and calm. These subtle signs are sometimes lost on the inexperienced, but if you can learn to recognize them, it'll sure help that colt immensely. And from then on, that impressionable equine mind can be nurtured and molded to become a trusting, reliable mount. And an important thing to remember in this process is it's much easier to keep a colt from being afraid than it is to get him over being afraid after a scary experience. And we'll try and get into that in more detail next week. And for Irvine Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something else that sure helps our horses is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Boy, I had a great time at the Mountain View Ranch branding a few weeks ago. Thank you so much for the invitation, Jason. About 150 calves or so, just the right size, and it was good to be reunited with one of my old riding partners, Kevin Posamon, and we had a great time talking about some of our adventures as we drug calves side by side. And I was thinking about ranches like this one and so many more where a young couple who are so dedicated and so energetic and are raising a young family in these priceless traditions. The money's not great, And this very insightful song from Matt Robertson tells the story about folks like that from the perspective of that young cowboy's best horse. You see, raising those kids is costly, and that horse is pretty valuable, so he's going to be going to a ranch horse competition and sale. And if that horse could express his thoughts about it, these might be it. The song from Matt Robertson is Cowboy's Pride.
I've made rich men richer. I've seen my share of long and hard days. I got 1,000-mile stare. But through the hard times, there was kindness too. For the man who owns me, I know it breaks his heart in two. Got a young family in this dog-eat-dog world, and I know he wants some better for his little boy and girl. They all stand around me, brushes in a pail. Today there's a competition, and then there's a sale, and I'm gonna run my heart out, gonna slide and turn, gonna do the best at everything that I've learned. And I stay and raise these kids, teach them how to ride. But today the highest bidder's gonna own a cowboy's pride. Last night I watched the stars. It was clear and calm. In the middle of the night, I saw the porch light on. I nickered like I do, 'cause I always look for him. So I walked on over when I heard him in the pen. Fingers in my mane, kindness from his hand. You know I got so much respect for this man that I'm gonna run my heart out, gonna slide and turn, gonna do the best at everything that I've learned. And I stay and raise these kids, teach them how to ride. But today the highest bidder's gonna own a cowboy's pride. Yeah, I'm gonna run my heart out, I'm gonna slide and turn, gonna do the best at everything that I've learned. And I stay and raise these kids, teach them how to ride. But today the highest bidder's gonna own a cowboy's pride.
Yeah, what a great song, Matt. And again, it makes me think of so many of these fine young families working for the big ranches. Sometimes the absentee owners don't even realize how valuable these folks are, who've studied hard and learned from so many of the top hands, gone to clinics with folks like Kurt Pate and Miles Kingdon and Martin Black and others.
Yeah, you know, and you mentioned Martin Black, and there's guys like Martin and Buck Brannaman and people out there that they put out the information, and it's available in so many different ways now. And in some ways, it can be a downfall. In some ways, it's really great. But I think there's a lot of there's ways to gather that knowledge that maybe was a little tougher to get out of those old boys in the old days. You know, you always knew someone was pretty handy at something, but you didn't know why.
Yeah, and they weren't about to tell you, you know.
No, you had
even if you asked them sometimes, it wasn't too forthcoming, you know. They was like they're keeping this to themselves, kind of.
Yeah, it was kind of you've got to pry it out of me or just watch. And there's an aspect of just watching that is a great, it's a great talent in someone. But if the information's out there and you can get your hands on it, boy, it's worth the time to get it inside you. So,
you know, even I remember 30, 40 years ago, you didn't see anybody on these, and I day worked for quite a few ranches around Kamloops and some pretty good hands, but you never saw anybody developing a bridle horse or even riding in a Boselle hardly. It was pretty much all long shank curb bits, grazer bits, and split reins, and that was it. But man, in the last, I got to say, 15 years or so, I've seen such a change in the level of horsemanship, and you see a lot more bridle horses with reins and ramal and a little Bosalito and long ropes and slick horns and kind of this whole vaquero influence. And they're doing it right, they're developing it properly. And that's been, the way I look at it, a fairly recent development.
Yeah, I think about that. I think about those Kurt Marcus books that he put out, and he took pictures of the buckaroos in the Great Basin in the early 80s, and they got into the Western Horsemen, and there was, from there, then we became more aware of the buckaroos, and then where did they get it, and you get kind of addicted to that. You want a better way, you want more finesse, you'd like that style, and the style is what kind of carries through to to everybody's hand, and they want that. They want a nice horse, and they want to be able to make a nice horse, and it it just inspires so many people to do better and to be better. And not saying that the old boys weren't, but back then things were a little rougher and tougher too, and I think guys have it a hair bit easier now.
Well, it's been so great to visit with you again, Matt, and I've been hoping we'd have a chance to do that because I've been kind of following you here and there and watching some of your spectacular bronc rides on YouTube and all that stuff.
Yeah,
some of your great music. And
I sure appreciate getting to sit down with you, Hugh, and it's been good to talk with you. And what you do for guys like myself and lots of other guys out there with your radio program, and you'll never know the difference that you made in the world, with what you've done with your Spirit of the West, and really, really proud to be on your program. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt, and it's so great that you're carrying on these traditions in such a wonderful way. And remember, you can order Matt's music on iTunes, or you can see his Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/Matt Robertson. And next, you'll hear the unmistakable voice of Bob Nolan introducing this week's classic Song of the West, one that he wrote, and then the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Time for another classic Song of the West, and this week we're going back to the prolific pen of Bob Nolan, Canadian-born founding member of the celebrated Sons of the Pioneers. Now, critics have said this song perfectly evokes the contentment of a tired cowboy on a tired horse, heading home to rest and comfort after an honest day's work. The song was one of the Sons of the Pioneers' very first Decca recordings in 1934, and it was registered for copyright in 1935, before Bob began writing for the movies. And the sheet music was included in the Sons of the Pioneers Song Folio #1. By 1937, Columbia Pictures had picked it up for a movie called Old Wyoming Trail with Charles Starrett as the Durango Kid, and it was included in the Pioneers' 1940 orthoacoustic radio transcriptions. It was, in fact, included in all of their radio transcriptions over the years, including the Lucky You radio program saluting Hank Williams, who had used the song as his theme. And finally, RCA recorded it on June 19, 1959. And that's the version I dug up here, with Lloyd Perriman, who was with the group for over 40 years, as he did so often, singing the lead. And I think this is pretty special. I went way down in my vault and located this priceless piece of tape with the voice of Bob Nolan himself, just as he introduced the song on the Sons of the Pioneers radio broadcast back in the 40s.
We were talking about tumbleweeds and the roving nature of the cowboy. Well, comes a time when something in his heart calls him home. His pony knows the way, though the sun has set and the trail has far to go.
Sun goes down, work's
behind the hills I love, and I'm riding home.
He's riding home. See that lonesome cowboy riding down that lonesome trail. Moonlight shadows swaying to the tune of his lonesome wail. Well, he's riding home. He's riding home.
Bed down, doggies, rest a while. I'll be back tomorrow morn and take you down to where the water's cool. But now I'm riding home.
He's riding home. See that lonesome cowboy riding down that lonesome trail. Moonlight shadows swaying to the tune of his lonesome wail. Well, he's riding home. He's riding home.
And just remember now, the Sons of the Pioneers will, and these are the real thing, the real deal. They will be touring BC starting in Abbotsford June the 20th, Kelowna June the 21st, Oliver June 24th, Nelson June 25th, Vernon June the 26th, and wrapping the tour up in Kamloops on June the 28th in Calvary Community Church. And tickets for Kamloops now available at Kamloops Live Box Office. And then in November, I understand, they will be in Edmonton and in Red Deer. Stay tuned for more about that. Well, Matt and I were talking about Red Stegall earlier, and here's Red in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight.
I wrote this out in Alpine after I'd been up on the 06s in the chuck wagon. And just being around those cowboys and enjoying their way of life, I realized how much it meant to them, and this poem kind of wrote itself one night. The horse trap is empty, the saddle shed's gone, and the gate barely hangs on the post. The road to the big house is covered with weeds, and a dead cottonwood moans like a ghost. The people who ranched here and called this place home are pasturing on some other ground. Or maybe they've gone on to greater rewards or drouthed out and moved into town. Whatever the reason, there's nobody here. And it looks like it's been a long while since anyone cared if this place was alive. But I can look back with a smile, 'cause I can remember the 20-odd years that I rode for this outfit with pride. Sure enough, good people treated us fair and gave us good horses to ride. There was young Rusty. We called him the Kid, though he wasn't much younger than me. He was killed in the cow work at Willow Springs Camp when a bronc run him under a tree. And the Triangle Roan. Boy, when he was a colt, he'd try you each time you got on. But once he quit bucking and I got him lined out, he was the best friend that I've ever known. There's the bed of the wagon we took into town when they throwed the big dance in the fall. If we rode a horseback and drank too much hooch, we might not get back home at all. We'd tie up the reins and let the team have its head, and while old Murdoch would spin us a yarn, we'd sit in the wagon and have a good time while the team took us back to the barn. Well, they fenced the big pasture and divvied it up into places that won't run a cow. It sure breaks my heart to remember it then and see what they've done to it now. The big thicket's gone off the cedar top flat where the wagon would stay for a week. I sure miss old Camp Cookie's sourdough bread at the roundup on Cottonwood Creek. I wonder what happened to Curly and Bill, and Cotton and Cody and Slim and Murdoch the wagon boss. Where's he gone? I sure took a liking to him. Oh, I reckon they're working on some other range. And the horses may not buck as bad, but I'll bet they're still cowboying, at least in their minds. and reliving the fun that we had. I'm sure that the years have reshuffled my cards and the hand that I play's rearranged. But I'll die believing we had a good time and that the code of the West hasn't changed.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride today, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to Mark and Kathy McMillan, our fine Spirit of the West support crew. You can find out all about their beautiful guest ranch in the heart of the caribou country at meadowsprings.com. And be sure to look for the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country magazine at your favorite newsstand, or to subscribe, just call 1-800-943-7336. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.